as much as we we loved what we were doing, if we did not understand how to make money in it, like to sell memberships, sell training, and really get the business in, it didn't matter how good we were at it. You would be broke. You can't pay the bills.
Mike, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me.
Yes, sir. We're excited to have you on today and dig deeper into that vast experience you have in the fitness industry, right? You're over 20 plus years with everything from fighting to coaching to gym ownership, growing into 5 gyms, 500 plus classes, right? A ton of stuff that you have been able to do over this past 20 years. Before we get too far ahead of ourselves, can you tell us, how did you get started in the fitness industry?
So I was going through school. I was doing some, like club and intramural wrestling just to kind of, keep up with it and have fun. There really wasn't a lot beyond that. And so I kind of went in, stumbled into an old boxing gym, this is before boxing had gyms that were accessible to what I would call the average client, right? It was a straight up pro boxer's gym, dirty, spitting on the floor kind of place. Like you walked in and they were thinking, let's see, you were being sized up the minute you walked in the door, right? It wasn't like, hey, I want to get in shape and learn to box. So, I guess with my combat sports background, while I might have been intimidated when I walked in, I still had this mentality of, I'm going to learn this no matter how brutal it feels, because I really want to learn and know it. So fast forward that, I graduate college. I started in my career doing commercial real estate, grinding it out like everybody else, and happened to find this little small gym. It was a little kickboxing place but I'd never seen one like it before. And it was right near where my office was. So I'd go over there and hit the bag, work out. So as I was in that gym that I was talking about near my office, they actually were like, hey, we were interested in, trying to open another location. They engaged me as the real estate agent. And so in that process, I realized, wow, this could be an opportunity to potentially work together. They needed, some support and some investment. I was fortunate that I had done a couple things that allowed me to do that and make a small contribution, as well as be the agent, as well as decide that I wanted to learn that business while I was still doing my other. So that's sort of how it all started. And then, as that process began, I realized there was such a need for what we were doing, equating like the type of training, which most people would, if you don't know anything about it, you're going to think it's aggressive and brutal and rough, and it can be. But if you also can make it very beginner friendly, very inviting, such that it doesn't matter. You don't need to be a guy who wants to fight. In fact, my thought was, how do I make this where my mother could walk in here, and even though she would maybe be scared and overwhelmed, would go through an experience that would make her say, yeah, I want to be here. So it was kind of like a bunch of little steps, and it wasn't like one master plan. It was as I took steps forward every day, and in some of my passion and my hobbies and my just interest, I was always looking for, how do I, sort of make a well-rounded life where, what I would do for work is what I do for love. What I, every day I tell people, it's like, I've got to spend, probably more than a third of my day doing something, for my career. It better be something I love to do, because that's a 30-year life or more in most cases. So, I've been very fortunate that, because of my experience and then my knowledge in the business side, and then getting into business for yourself. Wow. That's been more than a college education. I've spent, the last 20 years plus now. And it's weird to say that out loud because I don't feel like I've been, it's still fresh to me. But in that time, not only has X3 sports flourished, but the fitness industry has changed rapidly. And you see a lot of boutiques now where they didn't exist before. And then you're seeing even derivative type modalities. So, things that get really, really specialized, where it kind of was just sort of a all-in-one big box previously.
And I love that comment to your point that this was no master plan. You essentially just kind of had your eyes open, your ear to the ground, and you were kind of looking for opportunities out there. And to your point, you were trying new classes yourself, but didn't know at some point it would all come together. I think plenty of people would be influenced by that statement alone, saying, hey man, as long as you're out there doing what you love, and you got your eyes open and you're open to opportunities, it's out there. So talk us through that. When that came to your doorstep, how did you approach it? Again, obviously from the real estate approach, but how did you slowly begin to step more and more into it for obviously where you're at now?
Yeah, you just had to be moving and stay busy. And kind of like you said, ear to the ground, some stuff you had to do to survive and some stuff you did because you wanted to figure out how to make it work and make it support you. And so it was a little bit of both. And then as I partnered with that gym group, and I got to learn that fitness business, with them for about 2 years. In that process, the gym really that I partnered with, we really built it up and it took off fast. And we were really, guerrilla style marketing. We could talk about that. This is pre-social media. This is pre-web and, Facebook ads, Google ads. Like you didn't have those things. It was chase people down and get referrals from friends and hope, talk to people to bring people in and chase people with flyers, all the guerrilla stuff that still works today, but it's just in a different, little bit different. But, so I think for me, it was, realizing that there was no perfect, like, okay, I'll stop this and go do that. I had to let something go so that way I could really put my energy. And it was a big, scary risk because Delta was the security and the gym was taking off. But, I'd being a business owner at that point, you're like, but what if it doesn't work out? What would happen? But I came to that point about a year into it when I was like, I really need to be full-time now at the gym. I need to let this go. And so after 7 years at Delta, I did. And, you look at things in life and you go, God, that was, it's the most scary decision probably at that point, but it was also the one that had to happen. So that way I could really put that focus in. And then once the focus went in, it was like, okay, this is what I'm doing. So there isn't, that plan B mindset, it is like, this is going to work come hell or high water. We just got to keep working until we get it right, until we figured it out.
And since that's kind of your next big step, if you will, get on this ladder all the way up, tell us a little bit about where you were involved in this partnership. You mentioned ownership and it also being a partnership. Just paint us that picture of when you took that step, what exactly were you involved in with this first move?
Yeah, so this group, they already had the one location, and so they were wanting to open that second one. And when we did that, I invested, and it was partly, again, I was 24 at the time. So, when we started, I was going to be the managing partner of that location, which I did. We built it up. We actually opened another location together. So we had 3 at that point, within about 2.5 years. But I stayed managing the one full time. And then, then I started noticing kind of where I wanted to go next. And, the people that I was with, they probably weren't the most, honest people, from my perspective and truthfully. So I did have to, ultimately, I decided it would be better if I, went in a different direction. And of course that ended with me having to, sue and sort of get my way out. It's like a bad divorce, right? Everybody leaves emotional and, but it was an amazing lesson. And, as I told you, like that first coach that I went, to that gym with that day and met and started training with, him and I actually went and left and started what became X3. And so, it was like one of those, I'm appreciative of all those, screw ups that I had to go through because they taught me, what to do better the next go around. So it's better to mess up early and mess up quick than to go, 10 years down the road and find out that you're way in the wrong space like that.
And continuing with that line, obviously, as you're leaving there, to your point, there's plenty of lessons to come with it and no different, I'm sure, plenty of inspiration as you're starting your new gym. So if you could just briefly tell us, like, what are maybe 3 key factors that you really want to make sure that X3 had during development that would set you apart from either your previous experience or any other gyms in the area?
What I preached to my team was the 3 S's: sales, service, and sanitation, right? So as much as we loved what we were doing, if we did not understand how to make money in it, like to sell memberships, sell training, and really get the business in, it didn't matter how good we were at it. You would be broke. You can't pay the bills. So if you don't have a sales engine, whatever that means, if that means, like I told you, okay, cool. Every day, 2 hours of the day, we were out running the streets, putting flyers on cars, knocking on apartment complexes, getting kicked out of places. But you know what? We didn't let that stop us because we knew that was the first step in the business being successful. None of us wanted to do it, but we knew that it had to be done in order to create, the customer base that we could actually commit to supporting and helping. So sales for us wasn't a bad word. It was like, man, the more we sell, the more people we're helping. So let's go find them, even when we went out with the assumption that they're afraid to come to us. So let's go be nice and find an easy entrance point in. And man, some of them would look at us on the street, and you'd have thought, like, what are these clowns doing? But we had to. But the next step of that was the service. Like, once we got somebody who was committed to come trying us out, come try out the free class, come get an experience, and let us prove what we can do for you. We had to do that every time. It wasn't just about selling them one time. It was like, every time you walk in this door, I want you leaving going, wow, they got more out of me than I wanted to do, but I'm glad I did it. I got the results I'm looking for. One of the biggest things that I always prided myself on was, a lot of our members would be like, everybody here is just so nice. I just thought, coming into maybe an MMA style gym or a kickboxing gym or a sports training gym, that maybe there'd be a lot of egos and a lot of attitude and a lot of, like I said, sizing up kind of mentality. And we made sure that was not the case, because we knew our average customer, this was not comfortable for them. And so we wanted to make something just like exercise that's uncomfortable, comfortable, something that you were pulled into and pulled towards, not something you resisted. And then the last part, sanitation is it sounds boring and stupid, but, in the gym world, you don't want to walk into a dirty, disgusting place. I think cleanliness, organization, that also says something about the aesthetic. It's also how your mind can look. If I walk into a cluttery place, I just assume it's dirty. I want every customer to walk in here and go, yeah, it may not be the $1 million location, but man, it's functional and it's clean. So, to me, those ring true still today. You do those three things really, really well in the gym space for sure. Man, I don't think you can really go wrong. It's pretty simple.
I love that. The 3 S's, the sales, the service, the sanitation. And to your point, directly apply to the gym, but could be used in a lot of other environments too, just to keep in mind. So that's beautiful. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
As we dig into more of that business side, to your point, you were the small dog in the area. You were getting started with little assets. Talk us through that. How do you even secure funding, or how do you get a gym started from the ground up?
Well, there's the way I would do it now, and then there's the way I had to do it. So I'll tell you how I had to do it first. And like everything, right? Once you earn your way to the next level, I don't think it gets easier. But you also got to look at what your capital is. In my case, my capital was my time to work. That's, if it means 18 hours a day and sleep 6, that's what it was. And it was that for probably about 4 to 5 years straight. It wasn't like I had a staff and I just kind of walked in and checked it out. Like, no. I was the salesperson. I was the coach and the trainer. I was the janitor. I was the customer service agent. I was, whatever it needed to be. And I was happy to do every piece of it because honestly, I understood how each were important. But in that time, the job I was making money from, I no longer worked there. So I lost all my income. I applied to like FedEx. I was like, I just need to work. I need something. And if that means overnight so I can decide how to build a business during the day, so, I had a buddy, luckily, he owned a nightclub, and he was like, hey, you can come help me work the door. And I was like, I'll do it. He was paying me $80. I was like, I'll take $80 if that's what it is. So I did have to work over, and I hated it because I was like, hey, it made me stay up late, and then I have to be in the gym. So what ultimately ended up happening in my case, and this is, where, there's always opportunity around you. You may have to be creative. You may have to find a different way to do it. In my case, I know I needed a space. So with my knowledge of real estate, I was able to, talk to, property managers and landlords and kind of see what was out there. And I knew how to negotiate the lease because I'd done that. So interestingly enough, I acted as the agent for this company looking for gym space. Well, that company was me that was just getting founded. So I acted as the agent the whole time through the process. And so in the end, when they see the documents, and it's also got my name on it, they're like, wait a minute, this is you? I probably should have disclosed that a little earlier, but again, I didn't want to, I just needed to keep moving down the line. I always say, don't be dishonest, but in some cases I didn't lay out all the details until they were asked for. So this would have been, 2005 to 2006. And, I knew we needed to get a space. I knew that, what that would take. We did have some equipment that we were had wrangled together, such a hodgepodge of stuff. So it was like, how are we going to do this? If you could just get me a space, if I could just have a place where I could tell people this is where the gym is, start coming here. I knew how to set up because of my experience with the other gym. I knew how to set up the sales process. We had a programming that I could, hey, this is what the membership is. And I had the billing set up. So I had all that back end stuff, which luckily I'd spent the last 2 years, learning and mastering. So there was a lot of benefit from that. So I just had to get a space. And when we finally got a place, which we're still in that space today, and that landlord loves us to death. So they ultimately agreed to give us this space. Now, it was a old lens crafter space, and they didn't give us any money to build it out. We negotiated 3 months free rent. And so in that 3 months, I had 1 month to go in with my partner. We basically had to rip stuff off. I got into the construction side of things, not because I wanted to or I learned. And again, this is pre-YouTube, so I didn't know how to do any of this stuff. I was just like, we ripped out this space. We gutted it, made it as bust of a shell we can. I don't know how we even passed an inspection to get open, but somehow I pulled that off. Everything was just like, I don't know how I'm going to do every step of this. Just was like a roadblock and another roadblock. But we got the gym open on January 7th of 2007. I signed the lease in November of 2006. We got the gym open. I was like, we got to be ready for the New Year's rush, right? So by this grace of God, the skin of my teeth, I maxed out every credit card I had. I was driving a Nissan Altima to and from Home Depot to get supplies that it looked like it was a work truck with stuff tied to it. It was every wrong way that you probably would do it, but it was like, hey, don't think about why you can't, figure out how you're going to do it. And and my first rent payment was due March 1st. And it was $6,254, and that is burned into my brains to this day, almost 17 years later, because in my mind, I was like, I've got to build enough income to be able to pay that first rent so I can survive for 30 more days. And in that process, that's what it was. $6,254 was, all right, well, how many members do I have to get on to sign up? And at this time, we're charging $59 a month. So we're like, I don't know how this is going to happen. But back to this now, once the service, anybody who walked in, and this place wasn't pretty. It didn't have what you would say as you open a new gym. It didn't start with fanfare. It started with the door is open, go to work. Let's start figuring this out. And so, man, we went out there, and any client who came in, we treated them like the service level. You couldn't have found better level because, we knew we needed every last one of them to want to be there, to say yes. And through that level of commitment to them, what started to happen was every one of them talked to at least 2 or 3 people that they knew. And then, we started building relatively quickly. And so on March 1st, I was able to write that check I might have had $18 left in the bank, but it was like, hey, rent got paid. Okay, now you got 30 more days to do it again. So, but we'd built up enough reoccurring. And so, I tell people that story because it was like every little thing, like, oh, you don't have the money. Fine. You don't have the financials. Fine. You don't even have a location. Okay. That's okay. Figure each one out if you truly got to do this. If not, I'm going to fall flat on my face. So that went on. And it just was like that for months. And it was, my first paycheck, me and my partner, Tony, who's my co-founder. As I told you, me and him, we did not get to write ourselves even a single paycheck. 9 months in, we wrote our first check to each other, and it was $150 because we just wanted to finally get a paycheck. Because we knew we had to eventually pay ourselves. And even surviving through that, both of us had a car repossessed. My credit cards were maxed out. I was, probably behind on, a lot of payments elsewhere. And I just would call them and say, hey, what can I do partial? Can I do this? You just do whatever you can. Cause I just truly knew we would get there. I say I truly knew that, but then there were days I'd look around and go, my kid, what proof of there is that, I did doubt it at many times along the way, but I also think there was an innate belief that, no, we're going to get it. It's just, it may not be as fast as I want. It's not going to look like how I want, and it's not pretty, but, effectively we'll go. And so I love telling that story because I think so many people can look at the current state of things and go, oh, yeah, I can see how you did all that. That must have been easy for you guys. And you're like, you don't know the half of it. It was like I said, if I tell you, there was a lot of sleepless nights. There was moments of tears. There was moments of like, what have I done? I just need to give this up. Talking about deciding if you should jump, right? Like maybe it'd be better for both of me and my partner just to go get a job and take the stress off of our family. My wife at the time, he had 2 young kids. They were, and I'm thinking, man, how did we do it? So, yeah, thanks for asking about that because it's definitely very visceral and very emotional because it wasn't just, here are the steps. It was like, you have to endure that ability to just get beat up or take rejection or just the fear of things not quite going your way, but know that it will if you just stay the course. Like keep working until it does. And to me that, like you said earlier with sports like wrestling and kickboxing and martial arts, business is the same way. Like you can learn the skills, you can practice it, but until you're in the live fire of it, you don't even understand how it really works. And even when you think you got it down, somebody else has got a different plan for you.
An amazing story and definitely plenty of things to dig into there for anyone listening. That is crazy too. But to your exact point, it's all about just continuing to move forward and do what it takes to live that dream, go for what you're chasing. So that's awesome. Building off that, what are like some of the key takeaways? Again, to your point, we wanted to touch on some of the things of how would you do it different. What are some of the key takeaways that you would do that now that you're scaling, you're growing, and you're finding your success? What made you successful after that 9 months to keep going and keep growing?
Yeah. So what was kind of the next step was I realized depending on what you want to do, right? Like growing can mean a lot of things to a lot of people. So like, I think it's important to define what growing means. Do I want to grow this gym? Do I want to grow this business? Do I want to grow this location? Do I want to scale this business? That's a very different objective, and one of the things, at that age, when you're young, when you're starting out, a lot of times you don't build a business with the end in mind. I'm in that place now where I'm thinking more of what does the end look like, not because I think that I want to get out or I want to leave or I want to stop, but it's kind of that things I'm learning from other people who are teaching me, like, you don't know what you don't know because you've never been there before. You've never wanted to be there. Like, when you're 25 or 30 building a business, you're not thinking, what's it going to feel like when I'm 65? You just assume that somehow there's going to be this magic exit where someone writes you this major check and you're going to just ride off into the sunset on a yacht somewhere. But what I've learned is that that's very rarely the case. So if there are people doing it, like it's more of a reverse engineer. So it's like, what do you really want? Why are you starting this, business? Or, are you really building a business, or are you building a job that you have control over? So many people get into the franchise opportunities. They start businesses through franchises, which is a great pathway because you have a lot more support than kind of ground up brands. I didn't have any support like that. If it had been around, I might have taken that option. It just wasn't around when I was, or I just didn't understand it. So I was able to, fortunately and unfortunately, I had to build it, with my own like intuitions and, but I think, it's important to really know why you're doing it. And then, like I said earlier too, because you're going to have to do it every day, and more of it is not what you want to do every day. Sometimes it is. You want it to be fun. You want it to be energetic. But there's going to be a lot that you don't want to be doing that you're just going to have to do if you want it to really be successful. So, it's kind of a tough question. I think identifying too what does success look like, in that business? Is it I can make enough money to earn a paycheck? Is it that I can hire enough staff? Is it that eventually I want a business to run itself? Do I want to exit the business? There's a lot of questions that, I would ask myself, that I do ask myself now when I make new moves going forward. And more importantly, the biggest thing of all of it is if you're going to grow beyond something that is out of your control, like in my case, I knew I didn't want to just have one gym. I knew one gym could be a great paycheck, but it probably wasn't going to lead me to the life that I wanted. And, wasn't going to let me do what I ultimately wanted to do, which was change the fitness industry, and change people's perspective on what fitness is. Yeah, I think it was something that you had to look at it and say, now I'm very glad and very fortunate that I had more people come along that also shared the vision. And so what I have spent more of my time now, and at that time I was going through it, was learning how to build a team that could share that vision to take us where we really wanted to go, which ultimately got me to, so far to multiple locations and where we're going next.
And talk to us a little bit more about that. How key of an element was to develop not only a team, but the right team, right? Because obviously you can't be at 6 locations or 6+, let's say, you're going to keep going. You can't be at all locations at the same time at every moment, yada, yada, yada. So what are some of the key factors you have for developing the right team?
Yeah. Well, it starts with people, right? People, then process. You got to have the right people, but you got to have great processes and systems. Dial in. And I was always a very thorough, I guess you would call it, process or organized person. So my team used to kind of make fun of me early on. They'd be like, God, Mike's always trying to revamp something or redo it or whatever. And I'm always looking for the most efficient way to knock something out, to get it done. I think it was Henry Ford said this, you want to find the best way to do it, find the laziest person in the room and give them the task. I don't think I'm lazy, but I think I'm like a person who doesn't like to do menial stuff. And if you give me something, I'm going to figure out the easiest way to do it, because if I don't want to be doing it, I want to just get it done. And so it's out of my way. Right. So I was always doing that. Like, how do I make it better? How do I do more with it? But I had to learn also too, that you need complementary people. So if everybody's like me and we're all doing that, what's happening is we're all ripping stuff apart. We're all changing things. We're all trying to improve stuff, but the things that work are not getting done, or we're all working on the next thing and somebody's not making sure the day-to-day is being handled. And there are some people who are just dialed in for that. They want to know, what do I do? How do I do it? And let me do that. And I'll make sure it's done that way every time. People like me will do that for a while. And then I'll get bored and I'll go, well, if we're doing it like this, what if we did it like this? I'll break stuff just to see how to fix it, And you don't want people doing that to your systems for the sake of they're bored, right? And so I learned that there's different dynamics of people, but you want great processes and systems, and then you want amazing people that want to run those processes and systems. And when you're small, a lot of times you're playing many roles, you're wearing many hats. And so as you grow, learning how to separate that out and learning how to build a team that before, when you have more resources and you're used to just doing everything, it's hard to let go. So there's a lot of things that we could dig into in those directions, but it really is getting the right people, making sure that they're bought into the vision. So, I like to be able to, work in a place where I give people enough autonomy. You have a good structure that we know works. Now you just have to find the right people and then make sure they're always clear on what their role is in that structure. And if it gets outside of that, it's easier to identify where the pain point is and then fix that. And then the next part of it is also, once people are in roles, one thing we've done good on at different increments is, building, a progression or growth model for that individual. So everybody wants growth, but a lot, like I said, just like in the business, a lot of times we don't define what growth means. Do I want growth in that I want to make more money? Do I want more responsibility? Do I want, more, I want to make more money, but I want to be able to do less. What does that mean? And sometimes it's just counterintuitive. Like, more money comes more responsibility. And then that doesn't quite work for someone who says, but I need to, also make sure that I'm at all my kids' events and I've got these other things. And that's all good. I want people to have that balance. But some roles, don't always fit to that. And being an entrepreneur doesn't fit to that for me. And I'm not saying that I've done it all right either. I've definitely had to sacrifice some other areas. But I think just making sure that they fit. And then do you have that environment that allows them to grow personally while your company and your team is growing as well?
An additional process that comes to mind that many of these entrepreneurs would face similar would be kind of that lead generation, as well as that follow-through process. Can you kind of dig into what was really successful for you at the beginning, and what trends are you seeing now for someone to really be aware of, so that, again, as they're trying to scale and grow themselves, hey, this is how we're attacking that process now?
Yeah. So, yeah, like I mentioned early on, we were doing, the sort of what I call the guerrilla marketing efforts. And I still think those hold true. There's different ways to be more effective to reach more people now. Now that we do have so many platforms and the ability to get your name and get your brand in front of people, the playing field is more leveled now than it's ever been. Coca-Cola and, the startup all can get their word out on the same platforms. Before it was like, man, if you don't have a radio commercial or a TV commercial, those were like the next tiers of how to market. Well, now it's quite different. And so it really is about how resourceful you want to be, So I'm realizing that, like, there's just different portals where people engage with you. And then you have to realize, how are you connecting with them there? Is it like one-to-one connection? Is it informational connection? Do you put out content where people get a feel of who you are and what you are? And then does it help funnel them into a call to action? Like, am I putting out content just because I want to be seen as the authority and the expert, which is great? Do I only put out content that's all about, come try out our class, come do a free trial, which is really just a call to action? Whatever you're going to do it well. Don't do it because everyone says to do it. Like, oh, I need to do Facebook. I need to do Instagram. I need to do social media. Doing it and doing it poorly is probably as bad, because it's a lot of energy that goes into it and you're not getting any result. And you just have to decide if you're going to make it work, because you got to learn what you're doing right. Who's your audience? How are you speaking to them? And really, what are you offering? I've been fortunate enough to get to consult. I have about 18 to 20 gym owners, some franchisees and some independent boutique owners. So I've been fortunate enough to be able to, spend my time helping some of them out now. And it's given me also a different perspective of how they're learning. And we've been able to, kind of communicate to them. Same thing, everybody just wants to go, well, how do I put an ad out and then just wait for the leads to come in? And it's like, well, that can be part of it. But then we get into, if you do all that right, and people do click on your button, fill out your form, pick up the phone and call you, whatever. The next part I look at is, how do you handle that? Do you grab the phone when it rings, or does a voicemail get left and nobody calls them back for, God forbid, 2 more hours? I mean, ours is speed to lead. If you're not contacted within 5 minutes, we fail. If you fail on that first step, it's going to be hard to win that back. And a lot of companies spend a ton of money on marketing and advertising only to just fumble at the minute it actually starts to work. And then they say the marketing didn't work. But back to the second part, which is the service too. Like your current customers, if you're delivering for them, the place we've always had the most success is member referrals. I mean, bar none, 10 times more than every other source. I can spend $5,000 on, ads, and we'll get some results. But if I take that same $5,000, I'm not saying maybe don't do one or the other, but if I maybe took a couple $1,000s and really worked hard to incentivize my membership base, number one, if they truly like you and care about you, they want to help you. So, if you're just like, hey, bring me your friends and have them sign up, well, yeah, that's probably not the best. People might help you because they like you, but it's not going to go very far. But if you're able to have a more intelligent conversation, which says, as our effort to grow, we want to make sure we're supporting more people. We want to help your friends, your family. If we're truly doing what you want from us and we're delivering, is there anybody else that you think would benefit from us supporting them and helping them? And by the way, we're going to make it fun. We're competitive. So we do twice a year, we do a big member referral, and it's like, first prize is like Falcons tickets to the game, or, just because I can spend the money on something to just give people a competitive nature. And man, people love to compete. And if they like you, they love to help you. It's constantly changing, and people, are more influential individually than they ever were. And it's trackable too.
There you go. And digging into some of that back end, how are you ensuring that the products and the services that you're providing are staying competitive or staying interactive for the community? How do you know that they're enjoying the product that they're paying for?
Yeah. So a couple things for me personally. Number one, you talk to your people, right? You want to know what your customers want. And like everything, it's a little bit of a tightrope because you talk to 50 people and there's 50 things they want, because everybody's slightly different. But what you try to do is you aggregate sort of what are the common core things and what will level up that experience for that consumer, that member, that person. If you're committed to, improving your operational process, what you're doing is you're going to retain the people longer because I always tell my team, it's easy to wow them on their first experience because they have nothing to compare it to. But if it's your 100th experience, are you still being wowed? Or is it now old hat to you? Is it like, hey, it's going to be the same thing? So then kind of that certainty or boredom creeps in and you're like, maybe I should try something different. The beauty for us is we also have multiple modalities. So we're like, yeah, maybe you should, if you've never done jiu-jitsu, let's get you over there. Let's make sure the coaches are always inviting you. Maybe you've never done boxing before. Maybe you've never lifted weights before. Maybe you want to see that HIIT class and you see that group out there. So I think it's there's definitely a lot of ways to engage with those people, but they're the ones who are going to tell you what they want. And then after that, it's just, going out there and just, I like to look at what's going on in the industry because there's always creativity and there's always nuance to it. So, me being able to consult and help coach other business owners, also giving me feedback of what are they doing. And it's like opened my eyes to maybe things that, I didn't think that way before. And now it's like, well, gosh, these guys are going to be quicker to the punch on this situation because they don't have to overhaul a whole infrastructure. They don't have to change a process for multiple locations, which takes a lot more work than just showing up today and say, hey, I'm going to try this differently. And I'm going to test out the results personally, and I'll be the one who's reporting to me. So being able to do that has been pretty impactful in terms of seeing what the industry is doing. So I think there's so much value in, what to do, how to do it, but then really making that recipe come together is really the key, the secret sauce, if you will.
And reflecting back, building on that secret sauce, if you had one major piece of advice for someone to start a gym, whether the style be different, again, modalities are modalities, you'll find your niche. But if you had one major piece of advice to provide for someone wanting to get into this, what would you say it was?
Either again, define why you want to be in it and what you want out of it. So do you want a job? Do you want to design? Do you think you can do a program, a product, or a service better than someone else? Or are you just in love with something that you've already experienced elsewhere and you just want to be a part of that daily? Because that can really dictate what the outcome is going to be. So many people will get into it, and like, for instance, I know like there's plenty of boxing franchises out there now. There's, HIIT programs, like, F45 and Rock Box and some of these great brands that are now out there. And I think it's great because it's expanded our community. I don't look at any of them like competitors or negatively. In fact, I'm excited that those companies exist because it's allowing more opportunity for all of us to help really spread the mission of getting people to train differently. So what I would always say is, there's one thing to be in love with the training because you like it. It's another thing, do you want to be in the business of it, because it's very, very different. It's like, just because you love to eat steak dinners does not mean you should open a steakhouse. So it's a little bit of the same mentality when you get into fitness. Do you want to do this? Are you just driven and called to do this? And then do you spend, just like you would any other career choice, your waking efforts all about trying to become one of the best at it? So not only what is the product and the service that I love, but have I set myself up to learn sales, marketing, operations, people management, all the things that sometimes we just assume, oh yeah, I can do that, until you actually have to go do it. Even the most successful people have all done that and been there. And And, I always remind myself, I said, well, if you weren't doing this, you'd have to do something. So at least you're doing this. And so that usually helps me flip myself out of the woe is me moments and go, okay, all right, enough of your crying, get back to work and start solving what it is that's bothering you right now.
My 20 years of experience will never be easy to crank into 1 hour. So I know that there's plenty additional information, knowledge, experiences out there. If someone wants to learn more about you or hear more about education items you had, what do you have to provide for them?
Wow. I've started to dabble down this direction, but, I just love helping people. And so I love, the average client or the person who wants to get in shape. I always would just encourage them to just do a little research, see what's around them, see what they love, and go start somewhere. And in terms of that, if you happen to live in the Atlanta or Athens area in Georgia, go to x3sports.com. Check it out. Come do a class with us. Have it, enjoy it. And if you love it, we'd love to take care of you. If not, hopefully you get an amazing experience and you can take that to your own next step in life. And then again, as if there's other people that are in the fitness space as business owners or fitness owners, obviously you can still, connect X3 Sports. You can find me at Mike Littrel on Instagram and I think Facebook. I work with a company called Loud Rumor. They're out of Phoenix and they're an amazing group. I wish they were around when I'd first started, but I was able to connect with them. And, they're also, a really enhancing part that helps, fitness owners, learn how to do sales, marketing, and operations. And they're a great one out there. And there's others out there, but that's one I work with personally. So, X3 Sports, Loud Rumor, any of those type of places are, just great ways to start, but there's many around where most people are. So I say, like anything, start looking at what you want and then go find it.
Perfect. And thank you so much for that. And for anyone listening, any of those plugs or links will be down in the description for you to utilize and go from there for. So Mike, we appreciate your time today, sir. This was great. We wish you the best.
Thank you guys. Thanks for having me.